Well, when I first got introduced to recovery, I just wasn't following the suggestions in the program. I thought I could do it on my own. That's what kept me staying clean before. Like, I didn't go to meetings, except for to get my sheet signed for court. But when I started going to these meetings for myself, that's when it all changed. When I was there with an open mind to grow and learn, do whatever it takes. And if that means following these people's suggestions, then that's what I was going to do. And that's helped me tremendously.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of TSP, the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Keith Campbell joining us on the show. Keith is the founder of Sober and Serious, a thriving Facebook group with over 3,700 members. This group is for people who are serious about their recovery and strive to be better people every day. Keith started this Facebook group early in recovery because he was serious about his recovery and he wanted to help others that were just as serious about theirs, especially in early recovery. Keith's battle with drug addiction was no joke. He was using drugs, dealing drugs, involved in violent crimes, spent time in prison. The list goes on and on. Join us now as Keith takes us through his battle with drugs and alcohol and his journey into recovery up until today. But first, if you would like to know the best way to show your support for the SHAIR Podcast, here are a few ways you can help. First, go to www.theshairpodcast.com, and there you can sign up for our free newsletter, which will let you know every time a new episode of the SHAIR Podcast comes out. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. If you would like to know other places that you can listen to the SHAIR Podcast, you can listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. If you would like to donate to the SHAIR Podcast, you can do so via PayPal, or you can support us on Patreon. We have a thriving Facebook group that grows daily and has massive participation. Again, it's a private group, so if you would like to discuss recovery, share your experience, strength, and hope, help others, or lean on others for support, be sure to join the Facebook private group. And all of this information can be found on the website. So go to the website, and there you will find all the information that you need to help support the show. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey Keith, how's it going, brother?
It's going really good.
Excellent. How you feeling today?
Great.
All right, man. Let's dive right in here. So, folks, today we have Keith Campbell joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. And Keith has a thriving Facebook group called Sober and Serious, and he is joining us today to share his story. So, Keith, again, thanks for joining us, man.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about what your daily routine looks like and include your recovery routine.
Well, I usually wake up in the morning and I do a little meditation and prayer, and then take a shower, get ready, go to work. Usually when I get home from work, then I head off to a meeting, usually if I have time. After that, usually some fellowship with the people from the meeting, and life is good. Try to help people. I mean, I got some guys that I sponsor, and when they're willing, I'll meet up with them and take them through the book too.
Absolutely. Oh, that's what it's all about, man. Now, you say you pray and meditate in the mornings. So how do you maintain your spiritual condition, your conscious contact with a higher power on a regular basis, either daily basis or weekly basis?
I do a lot of praying, mostly for other people. But, like the Serenity Prayer I use, I go to church, but I don't know. I just, I thank God a lot of the times for, everything in my day-to-day routine and everything He's got me through. And, I just continue to try to grow in my faith. Those two things I try to do is grow in my faith and then grow as a person in my recovery. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
I've been clean since March 5th of 2015, so I have over 16 months.
Excellent. Excellent. We do have something in common. On March 15th is my wedding anniversary date.
March 5th, actually.
Oh, March 5th.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So we don't have something. All right. So tell us, Keith, how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Oh, I was pretty young, 12 or 14 when I first drank, and I don't know, made me feel, I guess, happy.
Those are some of the feelings that coincide with, drinking at an early age.
Right.
Happiness and that feeling of, I have arrived, so to speak.
Right.
All right. So I think we're warmed up here. So it's time for you to share your story, Keith. It's time for me to turn the show over to you and for you to tell us the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Keith, take it away, buddy.
All right. Well, like I said, I started at a young age, about 12 or 14. Started drinking with basically, I don't know, cousins and stuff at like family get-togethers. We'd sneak some alcohol and, started drinking like that. I guess I kind of went away from the drinking for a while. And when I was like 15, I started smoking pot. When I was 12, my mom died of cancer, and, it was kind of like she went into a coma, and it was like a big decision between me at 12 and my brother at 10 and my dad, whether we were going to pull the plug on her or not, because they said her brain was like basically, she had a lot of brain damage. So,
oh man,
if we were going to keep her, then, odds were that she'd be like a vegetable for the rest of her life. So we made the decision to pull the plug on her, and, being involved in a decision like that at such a young age, I didn't realize that it kind of carried some guilt and some shame, and some what ifs and all that stuff into my life, so I just realized that stuff, kind of when I was going into treatment. I mean, I'd talk about it a lot, but I didn't realize how much, something like that could actually affect me in my life.
Of course.
So I had that, and I was kind of always like a little troublemaker kid as it was even before then. I was a little bully and stuff, so I wasn't the greatest kid, even though I grew up in a good family and stuff. I just chose the chaos route. That's kind of the way I went. After that, my heart became a little colder and, built this wall around myself. Didn't believe in God. I was like, if you're out there, God, I hate you, basically.
Right.
If you're even there, because it's hard to believe that a God could do that. I have different feelings on the whole situation now. But so anyways, 14, I started smoking pot. The first time I smoked pot, I didn't really get high, and I was like, what's the big deal with this? All my friends were doing it, and I couldn't see the big deal. But it was like the second or probably the third time that I did it, I actually got high, and I was like, whoa, I was chilled out, I wasn't thinking about anything, and I just was having a good time, and it was great. Next thing you knew, I was smoking pot every day as much as I could. I ended up having to sell pot just to, support my habit. And, I would say 15 years old is when I started my drug dealing affairs in my life, and I continued to do that all throughout my whole life until, a couple of years ago, basically.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it was, I had a long, rough life. I mean, and in between that, all of that, I have 4 different baby mothers. I ended up drinking too a lot, and I have 3 DWIs. I've spent a total of over 7 years of my life locked up in either jails or prisons. It was a rough, painful battle for sure. And, all the times I was locked up, I had a lot of time to think. And I was like, I realized, when I went to prison for fighting a whole softball team at the bar and, being pretty much blackout drunk, and realizing, that I had a problem with drinking. I mean, drinking kept putting me in jail, putting me, that time I ended up going to prison, and, I knew that I had a problem. I went to prison, and that's when I first actually read the whole Bible through. And, I was brought up as a Catholic, but when I read the Bible, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a Catholic anymore because I don't agree with a lot of things they do in this Bible. It specifically says not to do that. So I was like, I'm going to be a Christian. And I attended church a lot in prison. And, when I got out, I was like, I'm not going to drink anymore because I thought drinking was my problem, So I got out and I maintained not drinking. This is all on my own, though. Like they tried to get me in treatment in prison, but I've always been an intelligent guy. So I wrote whoever I had to write and went ahead of, surpassed all the people that were trying to get me in there and wrote to the big wigs, and somehow I ended up getting out of going to treatment, which probably would have been a good thing for me to go. But at that time, I just didn't want to. I didn't think I needed it. I thought since I made the decision to, become sober or whatever, or what I thought was sober by just quitting drinking, that, everything would be okay. And that my ego told me that, you can do anything, because I had done a lot of things in my life on my own. But, I found out a lot later that that was just one of the things I couldn't.
Real quick, Keith.
Yep.
Because I don't want to gloss over this. You caught my attention at 4 baby mamas, right, and 7 years in prison. All right. So how old were you with the first time you became a father?
I was about 19 years old for my first son.
Okay. So you were just getting out of high school and, and was this your girlfriend? So give us a little bit of the background on that first one.
It was a girl I met. I was actually selling coke when I met her, and she was dating some other guy that I knew, and we disappeared together for a couple days. And, I didn't sleep with her or anything, but when I came back, my friend thought I did, and I was like, I'm sorry, whatever. I didn't sleep with her, but she obviously likes me, and I like her. And, it was kind of a weird deal, but next thing you knew, we ended up dating. She was a year older than me. So I kind of lied to her. I wasn't even 18 yet when I met her, but I told her I was. And I lied to her about that. And then, we ended up getting together. And then when she found out later that it was my birthday and I didn't tell her and I told her why, she's like, you're stupid. But anyways, we were together for maybe 5 or 6 years, and it was a lot of drinking, a lot of drama, a lot of stuff. And, basically, we ended up having a kid. We did live together towards the end. And one night she didn't come home, and I had a feeling, that she was cheating on me, which I knew she was because she thought I was, which I wasn't. But I was going out and partying and not, coming back and answering my phone and, not being a good boyfriend or whatever. So basically then I ended up leaving her and continued to drink. She wouldn't let me see my kid at first because she wanted me back, and
right,
that whole deal, and which ended up started racking up the child support. I ended up had a felony warrant for my arrest when my first child support appearance was supposed to take place, and I never showed up. So they said I made a lot more money than I actually did, and I ended up racking up a bunch of child support on my first son for that. I would say 4 years later, I had my second daughter with a girl who I was only dating for about 6 months, and I was really drunk then most of the time. And, You know, it was just some girl I met at a party and slept with her right away when I met her. And next thing you know, we were kind of dating, and she got pregnant, and that relationship didn't last very long. My third kid, which is about 4 more years after that, you know, was with a girl that I had been dating for a while. I was with her for about 4 years, and, you know, I had big mansions, and I was growing weed illegally and stuff for, I don't know, 6 years, breeding pit bulls and, you know, not fighting them or anything, just showing them. And, you know, I had other jobs, like cover-up jobs, like a mortgage job and, you know, building fences and whatever, just to...
Like a front.
Yeah, basically. I knew how to live without paying child support. That was my big thing. I didn't want to pay child support because I felt, since I didn't see my kid, that I just shouldn't have to pay, which, you know, I know now was the wrong thing to do, but at that time, that's how I felt.
Right. So basically, you've got this very tumultuous lifestyle where there's tons of drug dealing and, you know, illegal activity. And in the meantime, you've got these relationships that you're trying to handle, but you're pretty much drinking and using drugs the whole time. So it's impossible to be present because, you know, you're too busy in the party mode, right?
Yep, exactly. And like, you know, with the last one that I talked about that I was actually with for 4 years, you know, that was my third kid's mom. You know, I was, like I said, I was growing weed and dealing drugs, but I was not drinking for like the whole part of that, because that was after I went to prison. I hadn't drank for a while, but as soon as my parole officer stopped UAing me, I started smoking pot. And, you know, I turned into doing coke occasionally, and then it became, you know, oh, well, I can have a glass of wine. I had a glass of wine. Then it's like, well, I can drink a whole bottle of wine and not do anything crazy. And then, you know, eventually I started traveling for my illegal activities, you know, state to state, and I wasn't home very often. And I ended up, I had all this money that I didn't know what to do with, and I was going to strip clubs, and eventually I started drinking, and that's, you know, when everything went downhill fast again. And, you know, I wouldn't come home for weeks at a time, and when I wouldn't even really stop home. I'd just go meet my dealer and head off back out of town and stuff. And, you know, I just didn't care. You know, I didn't care. I thought money was the most important thing in the world, and, you know, these girls were just, you know, I just thought I had to have a pretty girl, and that's all that really mattered. And, you know, there's nice houses and stuff. You know, so I had an illusion of what was important in life going on for a long time. My last kid, I was with his mom, and we met. I was drinking pretty heavy, and, you know, she got pregnant right away. She was drinking heavy. We were drinking heavy. She had prescription pills, and she would give me some Xanax, Ambien, whatever, Adderall, whenever I wanted, whatever I wanted. And, you know, towards the last part of that, you know, that's the last year and a half to 2 years of my using and drinking days is when I actually started smoking meth, which I said I would never, ever do. And, like, I never associated with those people when I was selling weed, and, you know, just because I'd seen what it does to people, and I didn't trust people that did it and all that stuff, and said I would never do it. And, you know, a couple times when I was drunk, I had done it, but I wished I wouldn't have. And, well, I ended up, you know, things hit pretty much rock bottom, and I started doing that and started hallucinating. And pretty soon I was living with my best friend. I didn't even have my own place anymore. And, you know, you know, that was after that. And then I ended up going to jail. I got pulled over. I was sleeping in a Target parking lot with my subs blaring, and woke up to a cop flashlight, and I had an open bottle of vodka in the back. I'd been partying with a bunch of girls, and I went to jail that time. And instead of bailing out or having someone bail me out like I normally get past, I was like, you know what, just leave me in here. I'm like, I'm not going to bail out. I need this time. I need to get off this drug. And so I got out. I'm like, I'm done with meth. But then I kept drinking. So at that time, it was like, okay, meth's the problem now. So I got out and drank, and that's when I met my fourth baby's mom, and we were drinking together and doing, like I said, pills, and she got pregnant right away. And I started my own painting business. I was doing pretty good because, I had gotten off the meth and I had my head straightened on again, and started this painting business, had up to like 6 employees working for me. The problem is, like, all my employees were either people I was drinking with or using with, and I
Right.
started using again, and it got bad. I'd leave for a week, 10 days at a time, and just go get high with these people and stuff. And, I came back and I was like, I messed up, whatever. And, I told her I was going to go to treatment, and she said, all right, I'll support you and I'll quit drinking too. And, at this time she was pregnant. I'll quit drinking too, and I'll go to church with you, because I told her it's important for me. I need to go to church. When I stop going to church is when I stop getting out of the spiritual place where I need to be.
Right.
And she's said she'd do all this, but, and I was in treatment, and I realized, that, I'd talk to her more and more on the phone. She'd visit me and stuff, and I realized that she wasn't going to quit drinking, and that the life that I decided that I was going to live, like, and she didn't want to go to church with me, and I realized that, and I didn't trust her. She's lying to me all the time, and I knew it now after my head was clearing in treatment. I ended up breaking things off with her about 3 or 4 days before I graduated treatment, because I knew I had to do what I had to do for myself. I knew that this new life that I was coming into was, going to be a lot. My odds were a lot better if I got her out of the picture, which was sad for me, because being my fourth baby's mom, I really, really wanted it to work.
Right.
I think I was pushing it too much, and like allowing a lot of things to, allowing myself to be blind to a lot of things, because of that fact. And, my eyes just got wide open. I started going to church again, and, had a really good contact with God when I was in treatment, and did a lot of hardcore praying. And I just knew that, I couldn't be with her. And, I got out, and of course, right away, the birth of the baby, she's trying not to let me in the room. And, all this talk about, she could name the baby's first name and the middle name, and I just wanted the baby to have my last name. And, we had talked about this for days, and then she's trying to make the baby's last name her last name. And I knew what was coming next is she wasn't going to let me see my kid, because I've been through this before. So I took her to court right away, I set up the child support and the visitation and all that stuff. And I didn't really have a lot of money just coming out of treatment. So she had a lot more money than me, and she got a good attorney. And, they still were making it so I could visit my son, but she lied and said I missed 3 visits, which never happened, and just stopped letting me see my kid. And without me having an attorney, there's really nothing I could do. So I'm still kind of struggling with that. But, I still know that I made the right choice by, letting her go, because I know she's still doing the same things she's doing, and that's just not going to fit into my life right now. And when I have more money to get an attorney, then I'll go back to court. I still try to stay in contact with her and let her know I want to see my kid and stuff. My 2 daughters, I haven't seen them, either one of them, for years. I have court orders that say that I have to. I've already went to court for them back in the day, and, so I could see my daughters, and, they still just won't let me see them. So it's going to be another situation where I'm going to have to put them in contempt of court to see my kids. So, since I got sober, I don't have one of them fairy tale stories like a lot of people do, where, everything got better and whatever, as far as material and like family back and stuff like that. I got my, immediate family back for sure. And I never really lost them, because I didn't really screw them over too much. I definitely hurt them like everybody does, by watching us suffer and, dragging them into stuff, or them watching us sit locked up or whatever. We do hurt the ones we love for sure, but I never really like lost my immediate family. But it's my kids that I want to see, and I just know I'm doing the right thing, and if I keep going, that it's just a matter of time. They're going to have to let me see him, whether I have to drag him back into court or not. And when the time's right, when I actually can afford to, then I'll do that. I've been paying my child support now, and, I'm doing everything right. I mean, I've never put any of my children in any kind of danger. It wasn't like I was bringing them in crazy places or drinking or using around them. I never did that. But, the fact that, I was in and out of prison and jail all the time was, the worst thing I did to my kids, not being there and not fighting for them. Like, I should have did this court thing a long time ago. But I think the fact of the matter is that now when I actually finally do it, they'll be getting the best dad, the 100% the best I can be, compared to the crazy, criminal dad that I was in the past.
Well, I mean, and I agree 100%. And both of us are part of a 12-step fellowship. And a lot of what happens when we come into a 12-step fellowship is that we develop hope and faith. And so we start to take suggestions from the people who have trudged the road of happy destiny before us. So, they're able to speak to us from a place of experience. So in many cases, what you're going through right now, it will change. It will get better. As long as you stay on this path, as long as you don't, derail and you keep doing the next indicated right step, then these things they just seem to happen on their own. God just seems to place these opportunities for us to repair the wreckage in the time that He deems it, time for us. God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. I mean, I totally believe that. And if we try and circumvent, His will, then that's when the troubles really start. But, just real quick, I'm curious because you did spend some time in jail. Can you tell us a little bit about, because you said you got a DUI, but then you spent some time in prison, right?
Right.
For like 7 years?
I wasn't in prison for 7 years. 7 years is the total amount of time that I've been locked up with jails. And I was actually only in prison for about a little over a year and a few months. I had executed a 28-month sentence. Basically, I used to, I was a boxer and I studied fighting, and I was always really, physically gifted with the ability to be able to fight. And a lot of these bad people that, I grew up with and associated myself with, they knew that and they used that, so they would have me go and collect money from all these people. So I was like this guy that would pound on your door and want money, and for whoever or whatever. And sometimes it was for myself, but, I had got a couple burglary charges, which I never was really a thief, but I would break in places and beat people up, and that's what I was on probation for. And the night I went to prison, I actually was fighting a whole softball team and kicked the cop car door open after they had finally put me in the back of the cop car, and I had all these charges. So I was violent when I would drink, and I would do things like that I wouldn't normally do sober. And I lived a really, really, I would say, bad boy life. I associated myself with, these top kingpins and sharks and, the world of drugs and alcohol and, bikers and, gangsters and mobsters and all these people, So, that was my life. That's how I had built my life. And at that point, I thought, this is just how my life is. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to jail, here and there. I just had to accept that. That's what I thought. I thought, this is the life I guess I was destined to take at that time. And, thank God I realized that is not true and that I don't have to live that life, So, now I have no intentions and no desire to commit crimes in any way or hurt people at all, even as far as their feelings go. So I've definitely changed a lot, with following this 12-step program. A lot of it had to do with crushing my ego and realizing I needed to reach out for help and see that all these other people that had actually been able to stay sober for all these years had done it, and there's a way to do it. And I just needed to, be open-minded and willing and listen to them and, follow their path. And, that's what I've done. They say you get on this pink cloud when you come out of treatment, and then most people come off this pink cloud or whatever. Well, I never did. I rushed head first into it. I changed my telephone number. I erased all these numbers of all these bad people that I was associating with. Somebody told me the only thing I had to change was everything. So that's what I was going to do. And I was going to do whatever it took. I had made the decision before I put myself in treatment. I had my fourth kid come in. I just had enough pain. I was like, I'm done. I'm done drinking. I'm done smoking pot. I'm done doing everything for the rest of my life. And, at that time when I made the decision, I never thought I'd come to a place where I'm at now, where I'd actually have no desire and be okay with that. Like I thought, well, I'm making this decision. It's going to be hard. There's going to be times when I'm going to wish I could at least smoke some pot to do something and it'd be funner or this and that. But, I learned along the way that that's not true, and that, I found this place of serenity without all the drugs and the alcohol, and some place that I, before I thought never existed. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. And I'm not, I don't want to give it up for anything, and like, it's my goal to help other people get to this point, because I know how it feels to be hopeless and to not think that it exists. And, I'm just so happy with anything, the way anything turns out now. I'm okay with it, because I know God's plan B is always better than my plan A.
I love it. That's great. So here's, the message to the people that are listening, especially to newcomers, someone that's had a past like yours. You get out of prison. What were you convicted for?
It was a burglary charge. It was second-degree burglary is what I was convicted of on that time. And, like I said, I got out of prison and I thought if I just quit drinking, I'd be fine. I didn't know. I thought I could do everything on my own. I had a huge ego. I had done a lot of business things. I mean, I had mansions and whatever, whether it be illegal and legal or whatever. I had accomplished a lot of things in my life. And I thought I could do it on my own, and I just couldn't. There's this one thing that I just couldn't do on my own, and that was get and stay sober.
Yeah.
Well, not get, but stay sober.
Right.
Right. And do it the right way and be happy about it. I didn't want to be a dry drunk, and, thank God that I don't have to be.
Right. So you get out of prison, right? And so you have, like, if you're going to go apply for a job, right, you have felony charges that are, you have current felony charges on your record, right?
Yes. 3 felonies.
What are they?
3 or 4. I have fleeing the police for one of them, 5th-degree possession of marijuana, because at one of the DWIs I got, I had like 3 ounces of weed in my trunk. A 2nd-degree attempted burglary, which was basically climbing 3 balconies of an apartment building and punching through the patio panes and pounding some guy's nose ring out of his face.
Oof.
So that, and then, the other one, I was punching out windows and beating some guy up outside of his house. 1 burglary charge, an attempted burglary charge, fleeing the police in a motor vehicle, and that 5th-degree possession of marijuana charge. So, yeah, I have felonies, and it does make it more difficult. I mean, I can't just pick and choose any job.
Right.
Like, I'll go into an interview and I'll kill it anywhere, and, they'll run my record, and a lot of places won't be able to hire me. I mean, I just recently got hired at Goodman's Jewelers, and with my record, I was completely amazed. Somebody in recovery actually is my manager, and I told them about all that stuff, and they're like, well, we're not going to look up your record unless, you're going to get a promotion. And I'm like, well, okay. So I'm selling jewelry. I went from washing windows now to selling jewelry at Goodman's Jewelers, and I just got to know that once they ask me to move up to be a manager that I just have to say, no, I'm good right here. For now, until I get it all. And I'm working on getting my license back. That's been quite the struggle because, I dug myself a really deep hole.
You lost your driver's license?
Oh, yeah. I haven't had my driver's license in years. I just kept driving without it. And now it's been a big struggle to get it back. I just finally paid off the thousands of dollars in fines. And, I talked to the DMV the other day, which is hard with paying all this child support on 4 kids. I just talked to the DMV yesterday, and they're like, I have to have this interlock ignition system put in my car for 3 years, and I have to have that installed in a vehicle and insurance and everything before I can get my license. So I have the reinstatement fee to pay and then that yet to do. But, I'm trucking away one step closer and closer every day. So
that's amazing. And the reason why I ask these questions is because, for many of the stories that have been told, there's only been a few. And I just recently had one a couple of weeks ago with my buddy Ed, who has, very similar story in the sense of, the drug dealing and the type of people that you spend time with and the criminal element, and then spending time in prison, then getting out. And then, the rehabilitation part is so much more difficult because you've got these outstanding felonies. So like you said, you can't just walk into any place and get a job. But, there's something powerful about your story. It's just how resourceful you've been your entire life. The businesses and, what you've managed to accomplish. And like you said, regardless of what it is that we were doing or selling or, how we were making a living, many of us, because of our tenacity, because of our need to have a certain amount of money because of our lifestyle, there's something inside of us that we have this drive, this passion, this ability to be resourceful and do whatever it takes. And when we finally decide that sobriety is what we want, then we can also apply those same principles, that we used in the streets to stay clean and sober. Once we discover that we can't do this alone, then it's just a matter of asking for help, taking the suggestions, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, definitely. And, I did that. I'm either all in or all out. And now that I'd made the decision to not try to do this on my own, to follow, people's suggestions and, learn from others' mistakes now, I've been doing really good. I mean, like I said, I don't have urges. I mean, I got out of treatment. I had a couple friends that I knew that were sober, and that was it. And I contacted them right away, started hitting all these different meetings, asked these people I trusted who, the best sponsor for me would be. And, I got a good sponsor. I went through my steps right away. And, I never came off my pink cloud. I'm still on it. I don't plan on coming off it. I stay involved as much as I possibly can. With my new job, I'm not able to go to meetings all the time, like, almost every day like I was before, but I still go whenever I can, and I speak. I spoke for a teen treatment center every Monday for, months and brought a bunch of speakers in there, and I'll still speak whenever I can or get a chance, and it's like, like with my past life, I have a lot of people also that knew me before that when they decided to become sober, they hit me up, because they're like, because I was so bad, people are just amazed at how much I've changed. So they hit me up and they want help. And, I'm, by the grace of God, I'm able to help guide a lot of people that I used to know, back to this life in recovery, which is so much better. And, that's a blessing in itself, because being a drug dealer, I had led so many people in the wrong way. Basically I was working for the devil before, and now I get to work for God. So I feel a lot better about myself.
HP, baby. That's what I say. HP. Yeah. I love it. Higher power. So you've got over 3,000 people in your sober and serious private group. When did you get the idea to start that up?
I started that up a little over a year ago. People had started putting me in all these other sober groups and stuff on Facebook, and, I would go on them, and it just seemed like people were just whining on there all the time, and that was basically it, and I'm like, I need to start something different. I need to start more of a support group that's positive, where, people are really staying connected and growing with each other, not just like enabling people to keep up just basically whining. I mean, there's a solution, so help each other find the solution instead of just whine to each other all the time. I just didn't see much help in that. And I wanted people to be more connected. A lot of people feel so alone. A lot of people, when they get on this site, they see all these people that they used to know. I mean, people like old family members or like childhood friends have kind of became back and have got back in touch with each other because of this group. So, it's just it's a blessing. It's amazing what has happened. And people contact me all the time and tell me, how much my messages and stuff help them through the day, and that how much that group helps them. And it's, I started the group, but the group members, they're a big part of it. With all the group members doing what they do, it's just the group wouldn't be what it is. And I had no idea. I started that group with 200 people, and I had no idea it would grow as fast as it has. And it's a good thing.
It's a beautiful thing. It's grown exponentially. And how much would you feel that you starting this and being a part of it and getting the messages that you get from people, how much do you feel that has contributed to your sobriety?
Oh, it's definitely huge. Like I get on there every day and I post something in the mornings or in the afternoon, depending on how busy I am. And I have people reaching out to me from on there all the time, just with either they want advice, they want my experience, they want to know where meetings are, they want to know how to help a friend get into treatment. I mean, all kinds of things. And it keeps me centered, in this recovery thing. And it's always on my mind. I mean, it's the first thing I think of. I keep my higher power obviously first, and then my sobriety second, and then everything else comes after that. And, I know to keep things that way. I see what happens to people when they don't. So it's huge for me for that. It keeps my sobriety on the top where it needs to be.
I think that today, with the way social media has exploded with so many different types and varieties of social media, Facebook seems to continue to be the largest and the most dominant. But, for people that are out there, I have interviewed quite a few people that have their own blogs, that have their own websites, that have their own podcasts, and that have these private groups, and they're continuously doing service on a daily basis because of it. Because of the engagement from the others, it allows you to easily engage with everyone else. So it helps you and the people that you come in contact with stay accountable on a daily basis, especially since, for some people, depending on their work schedule, depending on where they live, depending on meeting availabilities, it's not that easy for them to get to a meeting every single day, or at least have access to recovery in an instant. And now, because of social media, you can literally just get on your phone and just ask for help, and it comes, right?
Yeah, that's a huge thing. A lot of these people that are on this sober and serious group, they don't even attend meetings, and, not that I agree with that, but that's where they're at now, or that's how they feel. Like, I'm not judging them for it. And, I'm glad that it can help them. A lot of people tell me that's their only thing. So that's another reason why I started doing a daily topic on there, because it kind of turns it into somewhat of a meeting for them. They get to hear people's advice or experience or the way certain people feel about each topic, and it gives them a chance to share themselves too. So, it's kind of like a meeting. And yeah, I mean, at first, like I said, I changed my number and all that stuff when I got out of treatment. And I was thinking about taking down Facebook, but I decided to do something else with it, and use it for a good tool, because I hear people talk about how Facebook can be evil and bad, and it can be good too. It's the people, it's not the entity, that make it good or bad.
Yeah, it's true, man. I could not agree more. And again, I don't spend that much time on my personal Facebook page anymore, simply because I'm so busy with the SHAIR private group. There's so much going on in there. I barely have time to go in there and check out all the bullshit that everybody else is posting, especially all the political bullshit and all that crap. I can't be bothered by it. I ignore it. and I try and focus my attention in the private group because, like you were saying, there's people in there in my private group as well that don't go to meetings and they don't want to go to meetings. They use this group as their way of connecting with other sober people. I always encourage them when they're struggling that, hey, you know what? It might not be a bad idea now to check out a meeting. It's just a suggestion. I'm not here to promote or push, but you seem to be going through a tough time, and I know it's worked for me. And I've watched a few of them, more than one, find their way to a meeting, and then they come back and they're like, hey, I went to a meeting and it wasn't so bad.
Right.
So, it's not. It ain't that big of a deal. So anyway, all right, Keith. Well, listen, let's start closing up. And the way I like to close up is for the newcomer. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and I want you to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's do this. All right. So what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Well, when I first got introduced to recovery, I just wasn't following the suggestions in the program. I thought I could do it on my own. That's what kept me staying clean before. Like, I didn't go to meetings, except for to get my sheet signed for court or whatever. But when I started going to these meetings for myself, that's when it all changed. When I, was there with an open mind to grow and learn, do whatever it takes. And if that means following these people's suggestions, then that's what I was going to do. And that's helped me tremendously.
Beautiful. And number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I would say that was when I was in inpatient treatment this time that I put myself into. It just hit me. I knew it. I knew I had a different life. I knew that God had a plan for me and that it was to help other people. Now that I had gotten to that moment, and it's strange to say that it was before I worked my 12 steps and everything, but I just knew it then, and the 12 steps just helped me learn myself better and, learn how to do it, and actually learn how to get other people to where I'm at now.
Absolutely. So number 3, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
I don't know if I have a favorite book. I have a lot of books I like. I have this book called Jesus is Calling, and it's kind of just a daily reflection type book, and that one, whenever I'm in a rough spot, it just seems to hit home just right, and I feel great after I read that book.
Jesus is Calling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the author?
All right. It's called Jesus Calling, and Sarah Young is the author.
Perfect.
Devotions for every day of the year.
Beautiful. A brand new book. We haven't heard of that one. So I always like to add books to the arsenal here. All right. Beautiful. So Number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Best suggestion I had ever received was to remain teachable, to realize that we're never going to know it all. And when we think we do know it all is when we're in trouble.
That's for sure, man. You gotta, that humility, keeping that humility is the key, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And I like to throw in there humility.
Right.
That's a key. That's a key one. All right. And if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
I would say chase recovery like you chased your high or your drunk.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you put as much energy into your recovery as you did into cop and dope every day, then your life's going to be amazing.
Definitely.
Great. All right. Great suggestions, Keith. And again, thank you so much for joining us, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, Pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.